1. The disappearing campsite. The air in the Redwood National Park was always thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient trees. I'd been backpacking solo for a few days, relishing the profound quiet. On my third night, I found a perfect little clearing, just off the main trail nestled between two colossal redwoods. I set up my tent, cooked a simple meal, and fell asleep to the gentle whisper of the wind through the canopy. I woke with a jolt, not to a sound, but to an absence of sound. The wind had died completely. The forest felt still. Checked my watch. 3:17 a.m. I lay there for a long time, the silence pressing in, a heavy blanket. Eventually a feeling of unease, cold and sharp, crawled up my spine. It wasn't the usual alone in the woods chill. This was different. I had the undeniable sensation of being watched. I tried to rationalize it. Animal. But there was no rustle, no snap of a twig. Just that profound, unnatural stillness. The feeling intensified until I couldn't bear it anymore. I slowly unzipped my tent, my heart hammering against my ribs. Outside, the clearing was gone. Where my tent had been, there was now a dense wall of trees. The two colossal redwoods that had cradled my campsite were nowhere in sight. Panic seized me. I scrambled out, spinning around. The entire landscape had shifted. My small campfire, reduced to embers, was now directly behind me, facing a thicket I hadn't seen before. My backpack, which I'd left leaning against a tree, was still there, but the tree was different. The entire clearing I'd confidently chosen hours before had vanished, replaced by an unfamiliar, suffocating closeness of the forest. I was utterly disoriented. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but where? I forced myself to breathe, to think. I remembered the feeling of being watched. Was it watching me now from within this rearranged forest? I fumbled for my headlamp, its beam cutting through the inky blackness, revealing only more trees, all looking exactly the same. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my tent, fully dressed, clutching my hiking pole. When the first sliver of dawn finally broke, painting the sky with faint gray, the clearing slowly, impossibly, reappeared. The two redwoods stood majestically where they should have been. My backpack was back against its original tree. The campfire embers were exactly as I'd left them. Everything was normal. Everything, except for the lingering chill in my bones and the absolute certainty that for a few terrifying hours, the forest itself had decided to play a cruel trick on me. I packed up in record time, not bothering with breakfast, and hiked out without looking back. I haven't camped alone in those woods since. The Whispering Echo. I was an amateur nature photographer, often venturing deep into the national forests of Oregon to capture untouched landscapes. One autumn afternoon, I hiked off-trail into a remote section known for its ancient growth and stunning waterfalls. The plan was to set up a small camp near a lesser-known fall and catch the morning light. As dusk settled, a faint mist began to roll in, giving the old-growth trees an ethereal, ghostly appearance. I had my camera out, snapping photos, when I heard it a whisper. It was indistinct, like a name being called, just at the edge of hearing. I paused, listened, nothing. Just the distant roar of the waterfall. I shrugged it off as the wind or my imagination. But then it came again, clearer this time, definitely a whisper. "Hello," it seemed to say. My heart quickened. I was miles from any trail, any person. I called out, "Is anyone there?" Silence. Only the waterfall. I picked up my pace, heading towards the small, flat area I'd chosen for my camp. The mist thickened, obscuring the path. That's when the whispers started coming more frequently, from all directions, swirling around me. They weren't distinct words, more like a cacophony of hushed voices, overlapping, some sounding mournful, some angry, some almost playful. It felt like the forest itself was speaking, or perhaps the echoes of those who had been lost within it. Then, one voice rose above the others, distinct and shockingly close. It was a child's voice, small and reedy, lost. It whimpered, seemingly right next to my ear. I spun around, my camera bag thudding against my hip. Nothing but the swirling mist and the towering trunks of ancient trees. I started to run, stumbling over roots and fallen branches. The whispers pursued me, growing louder, more frantic. Some mimicking my heavy breathing, some laughing. I could hear my own name, distorted and drawn out, coming from multiple directions at once. It was a mental assault. I don't know how long I ran. But eventually I burst out of the densest part of the mist and found myself on a faint game trail. The whispers immediately receded, though I could still feel their phantom presence at the edges of my hearing. I didn't stop until I reached my car, shivering despite the warmth of the cabin. I later learned that section of the forest had been the site of several disappearances over the years. Was it the wind playing tricks? Or were the ancient trees holding on to something more, an auditory echo of the lost, and never went back to find out? 3. The Tracker as a seasoned hunter. I've spent countless nights alone in the wilderness, comfortable with the sounds and solitude of the night. But one particularly cold night in the remote mountains of Montana changed everything. I was on a solo elk hunt, deep in a rugged canyon, far from any roads or other hunters. I'd made camp just before dark, a small fire crackling, stars like diamonds against the black velvet sky. After a long day of tracking, I was tired and drifted off quickly. I woke up to a sound I couldn't immediately place. A rhythmic thump. Thump. It wasn't the usual forest sounds. No deer, no elk, no bear. It was too deliberate, too heavy. I sat up, my rifle within reach. The sound continued, slowly, steadily, getting closer. It sounded like something large, walking on 2 feet. My mind immediately went to a bear, but the gait was wrong. It was too even, too human-like, yet far too heavy for any man I knew. I peered into the darkness beyond the campfire's glow. Nothing. But the sound was now unmistakably close. Just beyond the tree line, maybe 50 yards away. Thump, thump, thump. It was circling my camp. A wave of primal fear washed over me. This wasn't an animal. Animals don't deliberately circle a camp like that. I extinguished my fire, plunging the camp into total darkness, hoping whatever it was would pass by. The thumping stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the sound. I held my breath, straining my ears. Then, a branch snapped directly behind my tent. Not a small twig, but a thick branch, the kind that only a large creature could break with a casual step. It was directly behind me. I slowly, carefully, rotated, pointing my rifle towards the sound. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. The air was frigid, but sweat beaded on my forehead. I waited minutes, stretching into an eternity. I think I heard it again. A whisper right outside my tent fabric, a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the ground. Out! It wasn't words, but a sound of pure, ancient malevolence. It smelled faintly of damp earth and something else. Something indescribably foul, like decaying meat. I spent the rest of the night frozen, rifle pointed, every muscle rigid. I don't know what it was, but it stayed. I could feel its presence, hear faint rustles and heavy breaths just outside. It was toying with me, letting me know it was there. When the first light of dawn finally broke through the trees, the growling and rustling stopped. I waited until the sun was fully up before cautiously unzipping my tent. There, clearly imprinted in the frozen earth around my tent, were massive, bare footprints. They were bipedal, incredibly large, and ended abruptly about 10 feet from where my tent had been. And they were everywhere, surrounding my campsite in a perfect, chilling circle. Whatever was out there, it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a man. It was something that tracked me, watched me, and whispered at my tent in the dead of night. I packed up in a blur, abandoning my elk hunt, and haven't hunted alone in those mountains since.